And the famous story about you in that territory, which I guess Scott Hall has admitted, I heard him admit that he attacked you when you were sleeping. I guess it was due to a rib.
Well, no, it wasn't a rib at all. What had happened was Dave Peterson, one of my best friends in life. He had we went and checked in the hotel room, and he went in. He had a mustache thing. If you ever knew who DJ Peterson, Dave Peterson, because he wrestled, AWA days and made it WWF too for a while. But he had Scott Hall has that mustache thing, had the curly hair. He actually could have a little bit of a Scott Hall look. But what he did when we went and checked in a hotel that night, well, this particular night that caused all this, you got rates. I mean, they were all fans of Central State Wrestling. A lot of times, I mean. And so you get a rate, you get a discount. And he went in and said, "Yeah, I'm Scott Hall." Because he wasn't known yet. He was just started in Central State, so he told me he was Scott Hall. And got the rate. He got us a rate. And, we ended up partying up in the room, and we had a bunch of girls over. It was just a typical, young guys partying. I mean, it was nothing, no damage. Like, I think they actually took an alibi check for $50. I think a lamp had broke. But what we had done was taken the top bed off on the floor, threw it on the floor, so because we had a bunch of people in there, so everybody could lay on this box spring. You can lay on the bed, you can lay on that bed, and the box. We were just making more. It looked worse than what it was. It wasn't really that bad. Just the lamp broke, and I got charged for that. But evidently, and then so next day was Thursday, and I remember like every detail of it. I was still hungover because back then I used to party. When I said that today, you're like used to party, and hungover from that. I mean, because we partied. We had a bunch of girls over. We partied, and we got to the arena, municipal auditorium there in Kansas City, and I laid on the table. Was like, I'm gonna take a nap before my match. I want to do good, and it's TV taping, so I want to do real good. And I'm laying there hungover, like, oh gosh, this hurts. This hurts. And actually, I fell asleep. Next thing I know, I'm on my hands and knees in the dressing room, and I'm hearing commotion, all this noise, and then I see Scott Hall going like, "Fuck that, fuck it," you're leaving, going out the door of our dressing room. Baby faces. We had across the stage was where the heels. Back then, they kept us separated, or at least tried, But they, I'm on my hands and knees in the dressing room, like, what the hell's going on? Dave, DJ, he come and got me. He goes, "Come here, man." And he took me from a mirror. This was cut open. It was like hanging a little bit. My lips were split. I mean, half of it was here, half was over here. And I'm looking like, what the fuck? What the hell just happened? What? What's going on? And they said, "Scott just come in and started pounding you while you was, asleep on the thing." And at that point, I got so upset about it that I'm sitting there thinking that, so he just beat me up while I was asleep. And he was big, man, 6, Scott, 6, and boy, he was jacked back then, man. He was 280. So big old boy, especially my little 5'11" butt, right? But, I remember going out the door and found a little pipe about this long, grabbed that pipe and went across the stage, and Bob Geigel and Bob Brown grabbed me. "Where are you going? What are you doing? What are you going?" I said, "I'm about to go, no, I'm going to go see him." And I remember Bulldog said, "Don't do that, you just get hurt worse." That pissed me off more, actually, that he said that. I almost would have hit him, but they made me go to the hospital, and they stitched up. And I'm smiling because I got to tell you something about Art Cruz. Anybody remember Art Cruz, that name?
I don't remember.
He was pretty good and popular back then and in Central States. But I had to work with him that night, the next night.
Yeah.
And I'm stitched up here. And to finish the thing with Scott, that next day, I see him. It's Kill Auditorium. It's, you go up the stairs, and there's like 20 dressing rooms, so you pretty much get your own room, or something, one other person being there with you. But stitched up, right? It just happened the night before. And I see Scott Hall. I'm in the hallway though, and I see him coming. I'm like, oh shit, because I'm like, and he sees me, and it's like, oh God, here we go, man. Because I was the next day, I was still sore, and he comes up and he stops a little bit, and he goes, I guess you want to go round and round now. And I'm like, just one more time, but can I heal first? I was like, can I please heal first? Because I'm sore shit. And he apologized. He goes, man, they worked me. He said Bulldog Bob Brown told him that Marty, they tore the room up and put your name on. First of all, it wasn't even me to sign in, but Bulldog told Scott, said, yeah, he needs to get, you need to let him know he ain't gonna do this no more. He tried to get you fired, which that's what set Scott off. Enough to do that, and then he apologized. Then if I had that pipe, then I was gonna go out to Bulldog. But Harley was there that night too. What's going on, kid? And I told him, I said, he just did this shit. I'm gonna fuck him up. He goes, no, let me handle it. If I find out he did that to you, I'll take care of it. He won't like it. So, but the thing was that I still wanted to do it. But when Harley, the owner of the company and this Harley race, you had to back up. Yeah. But let me finish this one thing though, man. I told Art Cruz, you could see I was stitched up here and here. And Art and I were talking about, we can do this, we can do that. I was just be careful right here, man. Just be careful. I'll be a son of a bitch if we didn't get in the ring. He snap bears me, and you know how you do that pull thing? Oh, he reaches pull like, yeah. But yeah, that's what happened with Scott, man.
Yeah, because I heard a version from Scott that's on the internet, and he said he had asked Bob Brown for permission to do that if he would get in trouble or not, and they said there would be no consequences.
That's how that went?
So maybe that's why Harley never did anything, because he knew that Bob
gave him okay. And I will agree to this, to admit that maybe they needed to calm me down, but that wasn't the way, because I was in there and I was new, and I was a wild boy. We was partying with girls, doing what rockers do. Like when I say rockers, like bands and shit. When you're partying and stuff, okay, it was a little collateral damage, a couple. But they just thought it was too wild, and that was their way of calming me down. I got it in hindsight. I got it, but that wasn't. I just didn't think that was the way to, not that way.
And in those days, I guess that type of beating could happen in the ring with a wannabe or someone that was disrespecting the business too, and that never happens anymore, hardly.
Yeah. I mean, as we said, shooters, if you act in the fool, they'll put a shooter on you. And what they call it was stretch your ass.
Yeah. But probably with your boxing background in amateur wrestling, it would have been more of a fair fight if you had known he was coming at you rather than...
I'm pretty sure, and I got better martial arts as I went on, because I did a lot of training through my wrestling career. And you and anybody that's, when we got skills, when we learn skills, it's your confidence comes from what you know. It's not about who that guy is, what can he do, it's what you know. I know what I can do, and so, I never, thank God I had a good sensei that, can't be grounded with, you don't go out there and just do stuff to people. You've got the knowledge now to hurt somebody, but we don't do that. That's not why we teach you. We teach you, and so you defense. So yeah, I mean, if I would have been awake, and let me say this too, and I think me and Scott had a talk about this.
Because you're friends now.
Yeah, we were friends.
We've been friends for decades.
Yeah. Yes. But there was one time I reminded him, like, Scott, I still owe you, because we remember Godfather. Yeah. And at the time he was doing that, what was he doing, that voodoo gimmick?
Papa Shango.
Yeah, Shango. He was doing the Shango gimmick. It was during that time frame. And, it was a bunch of, we always ribbing and stuff. locks. It was locking people's bags a bunch, putting locks on the bags, and locking their bags to the ceiling, locking it to somebody else's bag, locking it to shoes. But and Papa and I were pretty good. We called him Bear. Bear and I were good. So I seen him coming off the one door, and I knew he'd be coming. So I was cutting up, and I was reaching down by his bag with a lock, because the lock, like I said, the lock was a big thing there. So I'm back there, and I'm waiting for him, like joking with him, and he stops. As he walks by, he stops. He goes, "Money, you better not." And he's supposed to be a bona fide badass too, you know. So I'm like, I was just playing, but evidently Scott Hall went and started stirring it up. He tried to get you, and he got him so worked up. Like, we do physical, you know, we do the blood pressure thing, all that. His blood pressure, they were saying, you got to get it down. We can't let you. That made him even more mad at me. Papa come over and said, "What if I don't make it tonight? I'm gonna beat your good." I'm like, bro, I was just. I went to Scott. That's why I went to Scott, because Scott was like, "Yeah, he was gonna put that lock on your back." I was like, "Bro, you know I owe you one, right? Whether or not I can, I'm pretty sure I could. Whether or not I can or not, I still owe you, because that's a hard thing. An ass whooping like that. Ass whooping, first of all, is hard to handle, but one like that, it's hard to go ahead and shake hands, say, "Okay, yeah, you tore my ass up while I was asleep."
I'm hanging out with the Men on a Mission, and we're in the Waffle House in downtown LA, right next to the Holiday Inn, right next to the LAX airport. And so we're in the Waffle House and we're eating. And, you know, we've been out, we've had a few drinks, you know, and smoked a couple joints, and, you know, might have took a couple Valiums or something like that. And we weren't feeling no pain. And it was probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And in comes the 1, 2, 3 Kid and Razor Ramon. And these fuckers are obliterated out of their mind. So they sit down and they ordered a bunch of food. I mean, Razor ordered a shit ton of food. And they had been taking somas all night, which are clisoprodals, which they don't really fucking hit you until you eat something. So they come in all somaed up and shit and drunk as a skunk, order all this food. So Razor gets his oatmeal, and he takes like 3 fucking spoons of oatmeal and eats it. And next thing you know, he bends over and he goes to put an oatmeal in his mouth again. Boom! Face first, right in this fucking bowl of oatmeal. And so me and Men on a Mission look at each other like, whoa, fuck, we're not going to save him. And we all three looked at the 1, 2, 3 Kid and like, we're not going to fucking save him. If you don't save him, he's going to fucking die in his oatmeal. And so Sean Waltman grabs fucking Razor by his hair and pulls him up. And all you can see is fucking oatmeal everywhere, up his nostrils, in his eyes, in his ears. And he goes, "Ah!" And he fucking sucked all this oatmeal that was stuck in his mouth down his fucking throat. And it almost had to give him a Heimlich, right? But he almost died in his fucking oatmeal.
Now, how did the backstage environment change in WCW from when you first got there to when Nitro really took off and it became a major company?
It was good. I mean, it really was good. I mean, you know, everything was, you know, the same thing it was, and it was going, and then, you know, and then it changed a little bit when the NWO got there, because things kind of changed. There was a total like changing of the guard of everything. So, you know, it was hard to handle, and then SAG got hurt after that, so I wasn't there much longer.
What was that whole thing about? I've heard I heard Kevin Nash's version of it actually, but I haven't heard your guys' version of it.
SAG got hit. I don't think Scott did it on purpose. SAG might have thought, you know, it was on purpose because I wasn't the one getting hit. It was a issue where, you know, it was all done before cameras were even coming on, so he really didn't even have to get hit that hard. So when he got hit, it cracked a couple of his vertebrae in the back of his neck. And, you know, from then on, and SAG came back, and he was there with Kevin Sullivan, and Kevin Nash and Scott were there and they were laughing, but I don't think they were laughing about that. And then Sag took it because he had a big egg on, I mean, his neck, there was big, goose egg, like a softball back with it. So Sag didn't know how to take it. Like, did they do that on purpose? So that kind of stirred it up. And then after that, everything was calmed down until they put us back on the road again where we weren't even supposed to wrestle. So that situation was totally WCW's fault.
Even WCW, if you wouldn't had to just walk up to Kevin Nash or Scott Hall, these frickin' Division III basketball players that are now pro wrestlers, and just not, if their arrogance and everything went away, they would have got the shit beat out of them. If not by some people, by me. I'll tell you that. I would beat the fuck out of both of them. But here's my point, is if you do, you're going to lose your job. You're on a $150,000 guarantee. It's free money. And it's too good to be true. Would never kind of talk some of the drama that's never even got brought up.
Told me a while ago to next I talked to you, Scott Hall, some conversation you had with
and Scott and I are cool too, and my conversation with Scott went a lot better than the conversation with Jake, but he had made some songs. I don't know if he was under the influence or something, or he was drunk, I don't know, but that Davey and Lex Luger were jobbers, and then I think my mom had made a post or like something like on Twitter, and then, like I said, these jabronis on these Mark websites, they post, Diana Hart and Scott Hall, they have words on Twitter and blah, blah, blah. So I messaged Scott about it, and then the message, when like a private message, because I follow him, and then it said that the message couldn't be delivered. So I don't know if he muted me or he blocked me, but I just said, hey, what's up, man? And then I talked to him, and then he explained to me that he said that him and Davey, they used to rib each other, and he would say, Davey, you'd be nothing without Lex, because you're a jobber, and then he'd go, Razor, you'd be nothing without the kid, you need the kid, because you're a jobber, and they'd go back and forth. And I said, okay, that's cool, man, just if you could have just said that in a message, I would have said all right. But I just told him not to let that fucking happen again.
What was up with the Scott Hall drunk storyline? Did you guys think that was going to be a good draw? It seems like, man, it's personal.
I thought it was very, very wrong. I thought it was very wrong.
Whose idea was it?
I think it was Scott's.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Like, what's
I have no idea, because he had enough stroke, if it wasn't his, to squash it. That's why I'm saying I'm assuming it was his.
Makes sense, because he had all the stroke and all the power in the world. If he didn't want to do that storyline, don't do it. You know what I mean? It was terrible. He shows up drunk. He's slurring his words. Really weird.
And Kevin would have stood in too. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Is it true that Scott Hall offered to mentor you?
Oh, he did mentor me. I remember even before Aldo, I was doing house shows as PJ Walker. Mm-hmm. And Scott Hall, I couldn't rent a car, for example. I flew, I remember like it was yesterday, I flew into Cleveland International Airport, Cleveland, Ohio. And I was 20 years old, couldn't rent a car, couldn't do anything. And I was traveling with the agents, Tony Gurria, Rene Goulet, and Chief Jay Strongbow. They were like, well, come with us, kid. And Scott Hall saw that, and he goes, bro, you're going to get so much heat. Come with me, because you don't want to travel with the office, right? Because then they'll think you're a stooge.
So he said, come with me. And ever since that moment, we were road buddies.
Were you involved with the Clique when Shane had his issue with them?
I was, yeah.
Okay, do you want to?
Not in the WWE was he when he was Dean Douglas, but there was a situation in Orlando where I was staying at Scott Hall's house, and Scott was no longer with WCW. He had gotten fired, and I had brought Scott to a show in Orlando, and Bam Bam and Shane and Chris Candido got into an argument with Scott and kicked him out. So that was the only confrontation that we had. But I still stayed at Scott's house that night. He let it go. He laughed it off. But I'm sure it kind of hurt his feelings, because I think he started to realize, wow, I was kind of a jerk all those years. You know, I think he started to kind of see his ways. You know.
Do you know how Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are doing these days?
I hear they're doing well. I saw Kev not too long ago. I hear he's doing really, really well. And Scott I haven't spoken to in a long time.
Justin Credible recently did a shoot interview with us, and he brought up a story where I guess he had brought Scott Hall to an indie show in Florida. Yeah. And you basically told him to leave.
Yeah, it wasn't an indie show. It was Kissimmee. Okay. It was an ECW show. Okay. It was 2 weeks before, I wish I could remember which pay-per-view. It wasn't the Kissimmee pay-per-view, because we would have been there that quickly. But I was in the dressing room, and Tracy Smothers had the ring. All the young guys were in the ring. And just like we always did, the boys were, everyone was milling about the building. And Debbie Beaumont, who was our ticket taker, came in and she said, I don't want to piss you off, but you'll never believe who's walking in the back door right now. Now, this is right after, all this stuff happened in WWE and WWF then. And I said, who? And she said, Scott Hall. Instinctively, I stood up and started taking my pouch off, and Paul Heyman came over and said, you can't hit him. I said, what do you mean I can't hit him? He said, if you hit him, you'll get arrested and you'll miss the pay-per-view. This is a setup. And now I'm really pissed. He's walking around our building. I'm sure he's only going to welcome with a welcome mat. And I said, well, how about if he swings at me? He goes, well, if he swings at you, it's fair game. So there ain't a man on the planet I can't make swing at me, I thought. So Scott, was walking in, and of course you can imagine the entire building went like quiet, right? Boom, all eyeballs were on us.
I didn't realize this was in front of the crowd.
Not fans, the wrestlers. Okay. The ECW wrestlers are everywhere. Everybody stops dead. Tracy's got all the young boy, the Chris Chettys and Danny Dorings and guys in the ring, and he walked in, and he turned around and he looked at him, and I said, well, you got a lot of balls walking into this building. Because remember, it wasn't just me that he had screwed. He had screwed Bam Bam, he had screwed Candido, Tracy Smothers. There were a lot of guys in that building that he had been involved in screwing. And he looked over and he saw Candido sitting there, and he said, hey Chris, hey Tammy, how you guys doing? And Candido stood and said, fuck you, Scott Hall. He kept walking, and Bam Bam was spread out on the bleachers. Hey, about you, Scott? He goes, are you and I still boys? And Bam Bam stood up and pulled his tights up and started walking out on the bleachers. And as he did, Scott Hall started backpedaling. And Scott walked up to the presenter and goes, you don't have to backpedal for me. He goes, I'm not going to do anything to you. He goes, the franchise is going to kick your fucking ass. He goes, nice to see you come, or something like that, and walked away. So now my task is to make Scott take a swing at me. And something like, what can I get him? So I said, I just kept digging at him, and he wouldn't say anything. And I said to him finally, and I thought for sure he'd swing on this one, so I was ready to block. I said, I got one question. I said, with all the money you've made there, and all the fame you've had worldwide, I said, exactly what this man's dick like anyway. And again, I'm thinking he's going to swing, right? And he stopped and he put his head down, and it was clear he wasn't going to. I just made the direct challenge to him. I said, Scott, you got one choice. This whole building's watching you. I said, you Scott Candido, you fuck Bam, fuck me, and a couple others. I said, and you think you're going to be welcomed into this building with open arms? I said, this ain't the WWE, and none of us is going to get fired for kicking your ass. And so you can put your hand and fight like a man. You can put your tail between your legs and walk the fuck out of here like a pussy.
again, thinking he's going to throw any second. And he looked around for a second, and he turned around and walked out. Honest to God, in that split second, I almost felt bad for him.
And that's what they said. Scott said he's got a gun. He's going to kill himself. Is there any way you talk to him? I said, of course I'd talk to him. And I called him. I never had him answer his phone ever in the last 10 years when I called. And he answered the phone, and he was just annihilated. And then me and Jake talked to him. And he said he was going to come up. And it took a month for him to come, but he came. And again, Scott Hall, really, if you go back and look at my career, I created what the Diamond Stud looked like, changing Scott's hair, getting rid of his mustache, growing the 5 o'clock shadow. That's where that was all the, but that's everything that Razor Ramon was. And it was like it built that character.
The toothpick too. Didn't you come up with the toothpick?
Yes. It's so funny. It shows you the way God or fate works, whatever you want to believe. We were leaving the Waffle House, and I grabbed the toothpick for both of us, and I had it in my mouth. I was just thinking about our promo, and I look at Scotty and go, I got an idea. When we get to the promo, we get to the end, we take the toothpicks out, and we flick them to the camera. And while I was cutting the promo with the toothpick in my mouth, it fell out. And I was like, no. But it was really perfect because it would become, Scott's calling card. And he flicked it in the camera, and the bad guy was born. I mean, all the promos that he would cut in WWE, he did in my 62 pink Cadillac convertible going down the road smoking a joint, because Scott Hall didn't even drink back then, but he loved his herb. He was smoking a joint and doing Scarface. Like, that's where the whole character comes from, which is pretty amazing when you think about that. And then he took it to WWE, became a monster star, and then he came back. And as we all know, who are wrestling fans over the Monday Night Wars, they went through, NWO went through everybody. He kept building people and going through everyone. The only one they didn't go through was me. And that wasn't set up by design. I wasn't a top guy. And I really wanted to be number 3, but it wouldn't have meant anything. It needed to be Hogan. And by the time they got to 6, I came up with the idea. They asked me, and I turned them down. And then you ask me again, and I, because we had a real relationship. I tag team with Kevin Nash. In Kevin Nash's Hall of Fame speech, he said, I owe my beachfront home to Dally, because there's many times I wanted to quit. And I would say, big man, don't let them beat you. You're going to be one of the biggest stars in the world. And look what happened. And, so I came up with the idea of me dropping the NWO, and think about that. No one had touched the NWO in over a year. And I'm the first guy to drop them and take off through the crowd. I came up with the idea. They agreed to it immediately. And then they talked Eric Bischoff into it. So Scott Hall was very pivotal in my success, because I was hovering at the bottom of the middle of the card. And I was a heel, and Scotty would tell everybody he's a baby face. He's a babe. Listen to the people. They don't want to boo him. They want to cheer him. and they loved it when I turned because it gave them somebody to beat up.
You've been close with Scott Hall, I guess, over the past few years. How's he doing? And
Up and down, man. You know, that's the way it works for us. You know, Scott's done real well for long periods of time, and then just when you think he's got it nipped in the bud, something else will happen. But that's the way it is with us, man. When I first went into Dallas, I struggled in the beginning. Scott did not struggle in the beginning. He nailed it off the get-go. But then 2 years later, he started struggling. So I just hope that both of us are able to pull through.
First time I saw him was supposed to be in Dothan, Alabama. And I started on this trip down with Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. And Robert was the booker. And, you know, Robert had a tendency to do some of the chemicals a little bit. So we left for the trip, and he's pulling his hair out. Yeah. He's higher than a kite. So we pull up in front of where we go in Dothan, and he says, "Dutch man, wait talk. I'm gonna need some help from you tonight. Can you figure out a way to get Scott Hall over tonight as his first night?" And he laughed. He just took off. I said, "Yeah, Rob, don't worry about it." He took off. But now I learned a long time ago, never let talent call their own finishes, because you don't know what they're going to call. So
Right.
what Robert was telling me, he said, "Hey, I trust you to help get this guy over." I said, "Okay." So I knew Scott Hall was a big guy, and he was about 260. I think he was more than that. He's probably 275, maybe.
Definitely.
But so all of a sudden, Robert disappears, and we got there about 7:30. And Robert was the booker. He's supposed to be doing the booker job, not me. So I said, "Where's Robert?" 7:45, no Robert. 7:10, no Robert. 8:00, no Robert. 8:10, no Robert. I went, "We're gonna start at 8:30." And he's not in there. No finishes were done. And Jimmy come up to him and he said, "Well, I guess we want to hand out some of these finishes." And we knew what they were. So we just said, Robert's somewhere. He'll be back in a minute. And we didn't know where Robert was. So I look out, but I had looked out in the hallway earlier, and I saw Scott go up the stairs somewhere. I didn't know where. So as it turned out, Robert and Scott were together, because, you know, Scott's been known to tap in that chemical solutions too.
Right.
So they were together before the match started. So finally, I told somebody to go get Scott for me, and I gave him the finish. And I said, "Well, tonight I think less is more." So we did this finish to where I got in the ring first. Hell of a house. About 2,500 people there, not sold out, but almost. It was a good card. So I got the people up because I had a lot of, I always got a lot of reaction in Dothan for some reason. I guess it's because they thought I was just a no good SOB.
Yeah.
Till I started talking. Then they knew I was a no good SOB, and then it just kept on. So they didn't have to think anymore. So I got a ring and got them going. Here comes Scott Hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, making his first appearance in Dothan, Alabama, blah, 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 Scott Hall." And he come down, and people, they stood up. Good looking guy. They said, "What the hell?" And he got the ring, and I'm saying, "Yeah, I'm going to teach you, blah, blah, blah." And we did a little histrionics there. The bell rung, ding, ding, ding. And I turned to holler at somebody ringside. He just running behind me and cradled me back, 1, 2, 3. In about 5 seconds or 6 seconds. And the crowd exploded. So he got out of the ring, and I went, I'm pitching a fit and, you know, doing my damn hissy fit. And I grabbed the mic. I said, "Not fair. That's not fair. I wasn't ready."
Right.
And people all over me. I said, "You can never do it again, Scott Hall, or whatever your name is. You'll never do it again, blah, blah, blah. Let's restart the match. Referee, get in here." And the referee was going like, "What the hell is that? Well, let's go." And we rang the bell again. He hopped in. I jumped on him. I shot him in for a clothesline. He ducked on it, turned around, small package me again, 1, 2, 3, in about 15 seconds. Now he's won 2 falls in a row in about 30 seconds. The people are nuts. What the hell? Now he's over. He's over like a son of a gun. And then to get him back in the ring the third time, because you know you got to do it in 3.
Yep.
I promised him $5,000 if he could do it again. And here he come again, and I got on him. Then he started to come back, boom, boom, and the people, wah, wah. And then Robert and Jimmy hit the ring, and we kind of triple teamed him in a second. And then the 2 guys, I think it was the Nightmares, they hit, and that's who Robert and Jimmy were going to have their matches with. So we just left that match and went right into the main event. But when they left that night, they had never seen that finish. And somebody asked me, where did you see that finish? I said, I'd have never seen that finish. I said, hell, I just made it up. Because I think, because he's a big guy, I didn't know him. I never worked with him. I didn't know if he was tough or, hell, I could have got hurt or whatever. But as it was, less is more.
Yep.
And when I did that, he was over. He was over from then on out.
Not sure if you wrestled Scott Hall in Florida or later on in WWE, but how were those matches and how did you get along with him outside the ring?
Oh, they were good. I never had a problem with Scott outside the ring. You know, Scott was a great guy. You know, he wasn't no different than most of all the other guys. You know, I don't got to tell you, Hannibal, when you get that much testosterone and you're on the road more than you see your family, okay, stuff happens. You know, there's the ribs, how severe the ribs sometimes are different. But Scott was a great guy. He was a good guy that had some issues, you know, that caught up with him and everything. And he was a great loss to pro wrestling. He was very talented, you know. He was very, you know, him and all the guys part of that Minnesota clique up there, I mean, we're very, very close. You know what I'm saying? Kurt Hennig and him were almost like inseparable a lot of times. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people say they're not as hard as they were been talking about him, but he's a good guy, man. He's a very, very good guy. You know, just sometimes, you know, shit happens on the road and you're affected by outside forces.
And thoughts on the passing of Scott Hall?
You know, anytime, especially a guy like Scott Hall, because I've known Scott for a long time as well, and especially when he came into Alabama. But I met Scott, gosh, I'm trying to think of the first time. I went to Germany for Otto Wands for a week in Bremen, Germany to work a match with Stephen Wright. And Scott came out to the ring with me after the show, went to eat in his caravan. And it's sad when anyone passes away like that, but it's even sadder to me when a guy who could be very misunderstood, but who was always playing with people, messing with people, and poking the bear, you know, falls on hard times. And the stories I've heard about falling, breaking his hip, and then staying in his house, 3 or 4 days alone? How does that? Yeah, that just was heartbreaking to me too. And then the circumstances after the blood clot goes into your heart. I was very sad, but it's happened way too soon. Everybody goes through it in life. Everybody's going to meet their ending one way or another. And Scott could be very polarizing at times, but that's for the people who didn't know him. My thoughts on the passing was very sad. I'm sorry to see him go. I'm sorry he doesn't have more time on Earth. Didn't have more time on Earth to even inspire or suggest, give advice to the guys coming up now, because that's what we really do. Once we're done with our career, some guys find it to do it, let me say, more organized and more consistently in a coaching way. But
everybody's the coach once they stop wrestling or get on in age in one way or another, whether you want to or not. Because if one person was inspired by you and they come up and ask you for some advice, I don't think there's one guy I've ever met, at least in my age bracket, who didn't offer at least something that you can take away. And again, I liken it to mining for gold and going to someone and they may just give you a few rocks. And then you may go to someone and they may say one thing. They may say one thing, and that's that nugget of gold you've been looking for. Again, having lunch yesterday, we were talking, Casey and I were talking, and I don't even know how we got on this topic. And I can't even talk about the topic right now. But he said, I'm going to steal that. Do you mind? I said, by all means, take it. It's yours. So, just talking and conversation, that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. In fact, that's where the majority of that stuff comes from. And Scott Hall was dynamic and pretty damn good at coming up with stuff that you wouldn't think about. And the way he would say it would make it react or make it resonate, not react. Make it resonate with whoever they were talking to, and that was a fun thing about Scott. He knew how to tell stories. He understood. Sometimes he'll start with a nice little story, and as it goes along, he's poking you to get a reaction because he's seeing how to push the buttons. And by the end of the story, he's looking at you laughing. Said, "I owned you. You were right in the palm of my hand the whole time." So that's I think the legacy of Scott Hall, the knowledge he had, the experience he had, and the advice and passion he passed along and threw out there. He was a bona fide star. I don't think anybody would going to argue with that. He was part of a huge element in making the Attitude Era happen. And then whether you say he changed the business or not, for good or worse, he did.
You had some matches with Scott Hall. What was he like?
Oh, he's great. He basically got me paid in WCW. He got me paid. He would you gotta understand, like back in WCW, back then, you've heard the stories. Just the inmates ran the asylum.
Yeah.
They would give Scott something to do that night, and Scott used to like to use Louis Piccoli. Okay, because Scott was smart. Because Scott didn't want to take all the bumps. He would have a guy, the guy that kind of knew what he was doing to take the bumps, Yeah. So Scott had this like Louis Piccoli. So when Louis Piccoli, like when he passed, they would give Scott stuff to do on TV. He would come to me, like I'll never forget. He just came to me. He said, "Hey, you want to do this spot with me tonight?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, so he'd go back to the office. He goes, "Hey, I'm doing this. The Disco's going to do this with me." That's how much stroke these guys had.
Yeah.
They never, when I was doing my whole thing with the NWO, what I was doing with Scott and stuff and everything, they never really started, it took 5 to 6 weeks before they actually included me in the thing that Scott was doing. Right. Scott would get what he was doing and just say, "Come to me," and say, "Hey, I'm gonna use you, and I'm gonna go tell." It was so Scott was booking me into his angles with him.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's how it all started. Of me integrating myself in the NWO because I was Scott's Scott. I was like Scott's Louis Piccoli guy. I would go out there and just do the spots and be out there with him and stuff and all that. And I'll never forget because during this time is the time my contract negotiations coming around, and it's I was gonna ask for a certain amount of money, but now I'm in the NWO. I'm on TV with Scott Hall. We're beating Goldberg for the first time, and I'm part of the match, where Goldberg's getting me, and I'm like, I went and asked for way more money.
Yeah.
And they gave it to me. So it's and that's all because Scott Hall was just booking me, and I'm becoming a more prominent character on TV because of him specifically was doing that for me. Because he knew I had a good mind for the business, and I'll never forget, when it got to the point where there was a big schmaz, Flair, the Four Horsemen, Hogan, Macho, Hall, Nash, and me, right? And we're in the thing, the booking, the meeting there. There's probably 10 of us, right? And they're trying to lay this spot out, and none of the guys could figure out what to do. And I just saw. I mean, when they're trying to, and you just see it in your mind, oh, well, let's just do this. You know what I'm saying? And I just raised my hand and went just laid it out, and like Hogan was like, I like that. Let's do that. Let's do that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then when we got out of the meetings, like, see, Kevin and Scott were kind of leaving me like, hey, good job, because now these guys look at me like, I'm not just some guy, some schmuck that Scott's using out there. Like, hey, I actually can, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that's the thing. That a lot of the mid card guys never really got to integrate with that. All the top guy stuff and everything. So, but that was but yeah, Scott. I don't know why he did it, but just one day at TV. Hey, you want to do this? I got an idea for you to do this spot. And it's funny. There's like I wouldn't be on the sheet. I wouldn't even match. I thought I'd be going home and go, hey, Scott. Scott be like, hey, what? Come here. Let's do this. I'm gonna use you. Let's go tell them.
Imagine AJ Styles doing that today with somebody.
Oh, forget yeah. It's like but back then that's how it was. Guys would just do what they wanted. They're like, okay, go ahead, because they're doing good business. It's like
obviously with Scott Hall passing away, that kind of hit me because I started thinking about how big of a supporter he was of mine, and I'm jumping a little ahead here in our discussion, but it kind of made me rethink how grateful I am for all the guys that came before me that have helped me so much over the years.
Now, when did you meet Scott Hall? Obviously, you just passed away. When did you meet Scott?
I mean, we had met in passing on the Indies, but I never really got to talk to him. But then when I was in NXT, he came down to guest coach, and I went up to say hi to him, and he's like, "Hey, man, you're my favorite guy on the show." And I'm like, "All right, who told you to say that to mess with me?" I thought he was ribbing me. I did.
Yeah.
When you're in that bubble and there's so many talented people, like a lot of people don't have an ego. They're not there like, I'm the best one here. You're just trying to do your best to make the whole product better. And for him to say that, I was like looking around, waiting for somebody to start laughing, and he didn't. And instead he said, he goes, "They got some kid driving me around this weekend, but I'm going to tell them I'm riding with you." I was like, okay, like, I'm not going to say no.
Right.
And that was it, man. Like, we rode together that whole weekend. He was in my car, and we were just going, like, eating and being late to shows. And then I was getting taken off shows. And then he was like, screw this. I'm not staying here if you're not working. This is stupid. And it was like a whole weekend of shenanigans that I hadn't had since I was on the Indies. And it kind of gave me that mindset of, like, stop treating this so serious. It's like, obviously it's a serious thing, but stop caring in a sense of just let loose and have fun, and don't let all this side nonsense kind of like get in your head and make you distract you from the ultimate goal, which is to have fun and make money.
Man, Hall is great. I worked with him like 4 times, I think it was. He's just so cool. We literally had spent like a whole full day, like almost like 24 hours together, because it was a signing. Then we had to drive someplace late at night. This place, nothing nefarious. He had a booking at a strip club of all places, which was crazy. But we drove all night to get there, and then of course he's booked at like, I think it was like midnight to 2 or 3 in the morning. Then they had to drive him all the way back. So I spent all day and night with him. Didn't drink at all. He goes, bro. He's like, obviously this was later in his life, and obviously he got cleaner. I mean, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, but he was basically gave me like life lessons along the way.
Oh, yeah.
There was 2 really nice hotels. They put him in the real expensive one, but they're on the same street. He's like, I told these guys, why would you book me there? You could have saved $200. Book me here. It's on the same street. They're both nice. So like his thought process was just, even for that, was like great. I loved him.
No, he was absolutely a genius. And again, just another guy that I'm fortunate enough to have kind of everything aligned, and we crossed paths when we did. Just what a guy, and a huge loss for the business. Absolutely.
But you also had an incident with Scott Hall, didn't you, where he slapped you in a match?
Yeah,
something?
fucking prick. Scott Hall might have been a great worker and everything in this business, but a lot of people didn't see the Scott Hall that we've seen every fucking night. He was a fucking jackass, fucking drunk motherfucker, on drugs, all pilled up, slurring his words, can't stand up. And, I had to wrestle him. I forget where we were at, but he had just come right out of fucking drug rehab, and he had dropped his belt to Double J before he went into drug rehab and came out. And I was his first match when he came out. And I was still undefeated at the time. And this was actually my first loss on record was to Razor Ramon in a count out. So he was beat me up. The finish was he was on top of me. Boom, boom, boom. Turned his back to me. The roadie come down, starts shining the fucking belt. Distracted fucking Razor. Roadie had his attention. Razor turned his back on me. I get behind him, do the fucking Mantar fucking shuffle, charge him. Boom. He sidesteps, throws me over the top. I hit the roadie. Boom. Down for the count. I don't make it back up. That was my first loss. But in the match, he called the fucking spot. So I'll do whatever you want to do. I'm just that kind of guy. I'll do whatever you want to do. I just want whatever you do to fucking be realistic. And so we went out there and we called this original spot where I go to lock up. Boom, he ducks it. Boom, ducks it again. Lock up. Boom, ducks that. Ducks the fucking clothesline. Spin around. Boom. He open slaps me and throws his fucking toothpick in my fucking face. And his buddy Diesel talks about this. He's talked about this many times on different podcasts around. Might even have been on your podcast. And he said that he's back in the back. Diesel's telling the story. He says, I'm back in the back watching the monitor, watching Scott Hall wrestle fucking Mantar. And he said he did this spot. And he says he open hands slapped him. He said he slapped the fucking spit out of his mouth. To listen to Diesel tell it, he knocked the fucking shit out of me. And knocked me out for the way fucking Diesel told the fucking story. But what really happened was Scott Hall took a fucking liberty, tried to knock my fucking teeth out, couldn't. I shook it off, and then took his fucking head off. You know, when we got in the back, I waited for that motherfucker to come through the curtain. I got right in his fucking face. We start pushing his fucking shove in. Agents were fucking pulling us apart. I said, fuck you, you fucking piece of shit, punk ass motherfucker. Do that shit right now, motherfucker. I'll knock you out. That's how I fucking... After that, my next match was, I think, leading up to Survivor Series or something like that. And I got beat by Bob Sparkplug Holly. When that happened, I packed my bags. I went home. Fuck you. I'm done.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Twitter